Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to this important spotlight event focusing on children and young people in the context of violence against women and girls. I'm Tony Buchanan, and I'm speaking to you today in my role as COSLA spokesperson for children and young people. COSLA co-owns the Equally Safe strategy with the Scottish Government. It frames our joint commitment to preventing and eradicating all forms of violence against women and girls in Scotland. It defines violence against women and girls as violent and abusive behaviour directed at women and girls precisely because they are women and girls. It is behaviour predominantly conducted by men, which stems from systemic, deep-rooted women's inequality. The strategy also confirms that children and young people of all genders can be and are harmed through mostly male abuse and violence, and highlights that gender stereotypical beliefs, attitudes and expectations also harm men and boys by limiting their development, undermining their emotional well-being and mental health, and affecting their behaviours and choices. Gender inequality, which is both the cause and the consequence of all these forms of gender-based violence, hurts and limits us all. Violence against women and girls across all its forms includes domestic abuse, sexual violence and abuse, commercial sexual exploitation, including trafficking for sex, so-called honour-based abuse, including forced marriage and female genital mutilation known as FGM. Tackling violence against women and girls is not a niche concern, but rather one that is linked to many of the key issues and challenges impacting on life opportunities and experiences of our children. Here are several examples of that. Women and children's poverty cannot be considered or tackled in isolation from the other. Lone parent families are one of the 6 priority groups identified as most at risk of experiencing child poverty. And we know that 92% of lone parents are women. Economic inequality underpins women's poverty. Poverty is a risk factor which increases vulnerability to abuse. Economic instability and poverty are common outcomes for women who experience gender-based violence. And what about homelessness? Domestic abuse is the leading cause of homelessness for women and their children. Keeping the promise in working to tackle violence against women and girls, we are also working to keep the promise because we know that domestic abuse is one of the most recorded risks, concerns for children who experience the formal child protection system and registration. In terms of mental health, there is a wealth of evidence suggesting that children who do not have their needs for the rights to love, safety and respect met are at a greater risk of experiencing long-term impacts on their mental health. Living with domestic abuse or the experience of physical, sexual and or emotional violence and abuse in childhood as a child or young person has been identified as adverse childhood experiences that can create and heighten harmful and sometimes lifelong impacts on health and behaviours. This can include rates of depression, suicide, anxiety disorders and post-traumatic stress disorder. Traumatic childhood events may also in time contribute to increased drug use and dependence. Let's talk about the importance of our schools. Recorded crime figures show that young people are overrepresented both as victims and perpetrators of some sexual crimes. At least 37% of over 15,000 sexual crimes recorded last year by the police related to a victim under the age of 18. Education is critical to prevention and protection. Our schools support young people to learn about human rights, about safe, healthy, and respectful relationships, and about consent. Where children are living with domestic abuse and the deeply psychologically, emotionally, and often physically damaging harm it causes, our schools can be those children's safe places, their refuge and support. And this brings me to my final example. Recovery from the impacts of the pandemic. Recent evidence indicates that the restrictions in place to control the spread of coronavirus intensified experiences both women and children's vulnerabilities to violence against women and girls. This may have contributed to a steep decline in women and children's mental health and well-being, as well as increased levels of trauma identified as one outcome of the pandemic. The local government blueprint identified the importance of prioritising a response to the gendered impacts of the pandemic. The further disproportionate impacts on women and children as outcomes of the cost of living crisis is already becoming clear and calls on us to continue that gendered response. And here we must recognise and highlight the intense pressure that our local services are under. Less and less funding is available to local government as a whole, and this is impacting on the resources available to support the local commissioning of specialist violence against women and girls children's services and interventions. As pressure on social work mounts higher and higher, so assessments and support for children and their non-abusing parent or carer becomes more challenging to assure. It is becoming increasingly difficult to do more than respond to the emerging crisis in the lives of our children, young people and families. Local government is committed to and has the absolute intention to prevent and tackle violence against women and girls and its harms. To do so, there must be support for children and families, which is early, intensive and domestic abuse informed. Children and families' needs are best met through a multi-agency, holistic response that incorporates a child-friendly, non-victim blaming and trauma-informed approach that holds perpetrators to account. Where children and young people have been harmed by sexual violence and other forms of violence against women and girls, their protection and recovery must be supported by trauma-informed interventions and services delivered locally through coordinated pathways of care. I know you do not need me to tell you that this requires dedication, capacity, and investment locally to achieve. Before I finish, I do want to highlight a few of the many things that local government is actively doing to tackle and prevent violence against women and girls. We are contributing to the development of policy around addressing VAWG and gender inequality in schools. Through engagement in several national forums, we are working to develop resources, including guidance for school staff to support prevention, intervention, and appropriate responses to VAWG in education settings. Our schools are active in prevention and intervention programs, including Equally Safe at School and Mentors for Violence Prevention. Our work to support implementation of the Scottish Child Interview Model has informed the approach taken by interviewers when in direct contact with children and their carers who have been affected by traumatic events, including domestic abuse and sexual abuse. This stresses that the impacts of trauma require to be safely recognised and understood. The role of the many multi-agency violence against women partnerships is identified in Equally Safe as the local engine driver of implementation of Equally Safe delivery. They work tirelessly across the local system, bringing together and supporting cross-service and cross-sectoral collaboration. It is critical that child protection, education, and children's services in every area are working as part of their VAW partnership. Today's gathering of minds, experience, and professional skills and perspectives from across the system is crucially important. I look forward to hearing about the outcomes of your discussions today. It is a valuable time for these issues to be raised, to take place, as the refreshment of the Equally Safe strategy will begin next year. Your expertise, advice and willingness to contribute to Scotland's commitment to preventing and tackling violence against women and girls is critical. You cannot get it right for every child through delivering our goal of an equally safe Scotland without you and your support.